Bună ziua invitațiilor noștri și bun venit la Universitatea de Științele Vieții, Facultatea de Horticultură. Iată o participare largă pe care am anticipat-o, dată fiind relevanța invitatului nostru de astăzi. O participare care, sigur, ne creează și oportunități de colaborare până la urmă pe subiecte de interes comun. Așadar, ne bucurăm astăzi de prezența unui invitat special la Facultatea de Horticultură. Este vorba de domnul profesor László Pinter, de la Universitatea Centrală Europeană din Viena, Austria, o universitate internațională cu, din câte știm, studenți din peste 100 de țări, cadre didactice din țări diferite. Domnul profesor este o personalitate recunoscută, este un expert internațional în domeniul dezvoltării sustenabile, în domeniile adaptării habitatelor umane la schimbare climatică, de asemenea în domeniul utilizării resurselor naturale sau a surselor naturale în transformările urbane. Este de asemenea, domnul profesor, un colaborator, da, al programelor de mediu ale Națiunilor Unite. Este de asemenea colaborator al Agenției Europene de Mediu, este colaborator al Băncii Mondiale, al OECD, în această problemă importantă a dezvoltării sustenabile, pe care poate nu am ajuns să o abordăm și să o tratăm la adevărata ei importanță, deși prin ceea ce facem noi ca specializări ale facultății, ca specializări ale universității, cu specific de științele vieții, ne încadrăm perfect în nevoile pe care dezvoltarea sustenabilă le are, contribuind cu cunoaștere, contribuind prin specialiști de asemenea. Ne bucurăm de această prezență datorită doamnei cercetător Mihaela Groza, cercetător de asemenea la Universitatea Centrală Europeană din Viena, un român din străinătate care iubește Iașul, care își dorește să-l vadă dezvoltându-se și care ne-a creat această oportunitate frumoasă. De asemenea, specialist în dezvoltare sustenabilă, practic în aceleași domenii în care este coleg cu domnul profesor Pinter și colaborator în cadrul unor proiecte internaționale importante, da, proiecte la nivel european și proiecte la nivel mondial. De altfel, unul din aceste proiecte ne și prilejuiește întâlnirea de astăzi, da, este vorba de proiectul Naturscape, în care Iașul este un studiu de caz prin dezvoltarea lui urbană și prin nevoia de dezvoltare sustenabilă a Iașului. Tema de astăzi, tema workshop-ului de astăzi, așadar, este dezvoltarea sustenabilă. Este o temă de importanță majoră pentru Iași, care este într-o etapă de dezvoltare urbană și într-o etapă de dezvoltare și modernizare a infrastructurii foarte accentuată și în care are nevoie de soluții de dezvoltare urbană. Și poate că este foarte bine că aceste soluții vin mai la început, înainte ca urbanizarea să atingă un nivel la care ar crea unele dificultăți. Nu? Așadar, acesta ar fi subiectul la care ne raportăm. Faptul că întâlnirea se desfășoară la facultatea noastră și la universitatea noastră, de asemenea, este un loc foarte potrivit și este foarte firesc, deoarece universitatea și facultatea prin horticultură contribuie, așa cum am spus, la cunoaștere și la specialiștii de care dezvoltarea durabilă are nevoie, respectiv prin specializările de peisagistică, specializări de horticultură și de ingineria mediului, adică tocmai cele care, alături de arhitecți sau de arhitectură, stau la baza componentelor dezvoltării durabile. Așadar, un invitat de marcă sau invitați de marcă, da? Audiență avizată și interesată, un loc potrivit și toate condițiile pentru un eveniment de succes astăzi. Câteva cuvinte și domnului profesor, poate în limba engleză, deși văd că domnul profesor are deja un translator disponibil. Domnule profesor, sau poate în limba engleză direct, cum preferați dumneavoastră, da? Dear professor, welcome to Iași, welcome to our university, welcome to our faculty. We are privileged to have you here today. We know your collaboration, we know your contribution to the field of sustainable development, to the field of contribution to adaptation of human habitats to climate change, and also to a nature-based solution to urban development. We know also all your contribution with international organization, with environmental programs of the United Nations, with the Environment Agency, European Agency, and World Bank, and USV also. Iași is a large city, in fact is the second large in Romania. As population, it is the main urban center in this part of Romania, in Moldavia region in fact. It is an important development at this time, so it needs solution for sustainable development. In this context, I would say that your presence here is an answer to the need of our city for development, for sustainable development. And I personally, I would like to think that this meeting, this first meeting in our university, could be the beginning, maybe, or could put a basis for a long-term collaboration with our city, with our university, and with our faculty. Yeah? Thank you very much for being here today with us, for sharing your expertise and your contribution with us, and I invite you further to present your subject. Yeah? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the very generous introduction, and I'm very humbled by this interest, by you, by the media, and I really want to thank all our local partners to basically help with Roxana being the engine. Where is Roxana? And the others. So I'm very, very, and Dean, for your words. This is very welcoming. Again, so I've been maybe just about myself. I feel very much at home at this institution. My first degree was actually in agronomy, as a sort of an integrated subject, and that was back in Hungary actually. And my second degree was also integrated in natural resources management in Canada at the University of Manitoba, and my PhD was also sort of integrated at the University of Minnesota. So I kind of scuttled across continents and countries, but the integrated perspective, and a perspective that is rooted in recognizing the complexity of relationship between the natural world and society, not kind of putting these ideas in boxes, but looking at them as what we call these days as socio-ecological systems, is really sort of at the root of my broader thinking. So, and as it was mentioned, I did work in many areas and many sectors and so on, and is in some ways the work that I'm talking about today is a synthetic, interesting illustration, I think, of this very organic, very deep relationship between the natural environment as we know it and the various dimensions of human society. Both of them, in a way, are having their own problems, and also, but both of them, and the linkage between humans and nature, also offering a lot of hope. So I think the message I'm trying to send is hopeful, despite all the problems that we have. Okay. I should also say, that before this, that this is my second visit to Iași. I was here in 2000, 25 years ago, when we had a project on local Agenda 21, funded by the Canadian International Development Agency, and local Agenda 21 projects were basically, those of you who don't necessarily remember these, were attempts to bring the Brundtland agenda, the broad aspects of sustainable development, into the local context, local community context. So we had this case, we had 𝒊𝒖𝒏𝒆, 𝒊𝒖𝒏𝒆, Mureș, and Iași, 3 cases in Romania, and we worked with local chambers of commerce, municipalities, and so on. So, I mean, I guess seeds were planted, but seeds were already in the ground, of course, but it brings back good memories, and now that I'm here the second time, I'm fascinated by the changes that happens ever since. So, but enough of that. So, let me get into these specifics. Nature-based solutions is as they say, it's old wine in a new bottle to some extent. Of course, it's a new concept, but we had urban nature with us for ever since we had cities. So there are 2 projects that followed each other. Right now I'm standing here and talking mainly about naturescapes, but there was a previous 4-year project also funded by the Horizon program called Nature-Vation, where we looked at urban nature-based solutions as distinct elements of the urban landscape. Naturescapes project we are basically in the second year. It's also Horizon funded. And I think one of the main differences here is that one has to realize that of course, it's not enough to look at green infrastructure elements in cities in their own as distinct entities. Let's say an urban park, a community garden, or an urban river, or a green roof. I mean, you can look at them as distinct elements, and from the perspective of management and design, they can be distinct units, but you actually have, but they also coexist on the landscape. So there are interactions between them. So you have to sort of scale up to the landscape level, and that's what we. And then you think about what are those interactions, what are the different benefits and management strategies. So. Okay, so that we have, of course, a definition. This is an EU definition for nature-based solutions, and they have to be inspired by nature, cost-effective, provide environmental, social, economic benefits, such as specifics like areas like climate change and the biodiversity, but also human health and even food supply sometimes. These are place-based, flexible, and multidimensional interventions. Most of them will have more than one type of benefit, and the benefits can vary depending on the landscape and what is the green infrastructure element or the nature-based solution element. It could be water management related, for instance, by increasing permeability of soil. You reduce the risk of flash floods in cities, and you've seen all the effects of these flash floods in cities across Europe. Just this last year, they can improve air quality. That needs little explanation, I think. They can add to urban regeneration, including property value. They can help address social justice and cohesion issues, because people like to work together in providing access to green space. is also a form of justice. And then add to economic opportunities, because creating green space and green infrastructure itself requires investment, and the maintenance also requires investment. So, okay. Then, in the context of our previous project, Naturevation, and the present project of Naturescapes, one of the things that our team has done is we created what is, by most measures, the most extensive database of urban nature-based solutions. It's called the Urban Nature Atlas. It's freely available. You can visit it, and there are and what we have already documented over 2,000 cases, and we are in the context of Naturescapes, we are adding another 390 detailed descriptions of nature-based solutions from around the world. So this is now maintained by Fizzy Solutions, which is a small startup company we created after Naturevation. So I invite you to visit the Urban Nature Atlas. I had a newer presentation where I had some examples, but that was in the other file that we can circulate later. So the idea of Naturescape again arises from this fact that when you zoom out and look at the landscape level, let's say to the level of a watershed, you will find that any changes that are made in the upstream areas will obviously influence water flow and dynamics, and influence how urban. It's also influenced by how urban drainage systems managed. If we reduce the coverage of concrete in the cities, there's going to be more recharge to groundwater. Therefore, you reduce the risk of flash floods and flow into rivers. Any changes in agricultural forestry schemes will change nutrient loading. Again, large urban parks and green roofs will modify not just the hydrology of the system, but also the urban heat island. In fact, there's a lot of research going on now with respect to quantifying and measuring the impacts of green space on overheating. Again, this is becoming so to say, hot topic. Every summer, more and more. Big cities are suffering from heat stress. And then you can go out all the way to coastal areas. And the way coasts are managed, that can, like coastal stabilization. So there are nature-based solutions like replanting coastal forests that will reduce coastal erosion. So again, but you have to, in order to see the interactions between these different green infrastructure elements, you have to zoom out, and that's what we said. That's why I knew this idea of the Naturescape. So again, why do we do this research? Because we want to better understand the synergies and trade-offs between these different landscape elements. We also realized that in many cases, when green space is created, it's not maintained well. You don't just kind of create green space. These are living systems, so they have to be taken care of, which requires capacity, resources, technology, organization, governance. So we want to understand how this is taken care of in different cities. And then, and this usually requires the participation and collaboration of more than just like one type of entity. It's not just, let's say, the municipality that is responsible for these types of infrastructure. Very often it could be institutions like a university, companies, it could be social organizations or informal social groups. So these are very different entities, sometimes working collaboratively to manage green infrastructure. So we also want to understand through this research what are examples for these types of governance arrangements, what works, what doesn't work. So I'm going to say a few words about what we are doing in the projects. There are three main objectives. Basically, first one is to develop new assessment approaches and to understand these landscape scale synergies and trade-offs. The second is to understand and we do that in the context of these 12 core and 18 kind of control cities that I'll tell you about briefly. Then the second is to evaluate the socio-political conditions and dynamics of MBS implementation. Basically, what makes these naturescapes effective. And effectiveness, again, is understood in terms of their contribution to solving problems, recognized problems. Urban flooding, urban heat island effect, contribution to property value, supporting good collaboration between different social groups, particularly vulnerable groups. And then objective 3 is more sort of action-oriented. What can we do to actually enhance the transformative potential of nature-based solutions? So this is based on the understanding that the cities that we will have, let's say 20, 30 years from today, will have to be rather different, not just because of other forces out there, such as climate change and technological development, but as cities grow, they also have larger problems, and people could get more isolated from nature. So how can we counter those trends? Now we realize that these objectives are interconnected, so we work in a number of work packages. We are leading the first work package, so that's what I will say a few more words about. Basically, we collected. We already finished the collection of information on 390 nature-based solutions in 30 cities around the world. We are also in the process of constructing a report card on these nature-based solutions, basically trying to pull together the indicators that would give one an easy and quick snapshot over the performance or the contribution of these nature-based solutions to the various environmental and social dimensions. We work with, and we have three main focus: climate, biodiversity, and human social benefits. So we work closely on these, most closely with on these topics with partners like the Nature Conservancy and Lund University. Then we are also going to look at, with partners in work package 3, on the imaginaries of cities. And an imaginary would be basically a vision of a future condition of a city, expressed either verbally or technically through numbers, or even artistically. And how is these futures articulated, and how these imaginaries could be reflected in this in developing strategies, whether technical strategies, governance strategies, finance strategies, to make sure that urban development is gradually moving in the direction of these inspiring imaginaries. And there are cities that are actually going ahead and developing imaginaries or future scenarios for themselves with some time horizon, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. So we understand, again, how that's done and what can we learn from that. Then we are interested in co-governance and co-finance arrangements. The finance question is interesting because there seems to be more and more willingness now to put significant amounts of funding into green infrastructure. We are hearing this from not just governments, but also from financial institutions such as the European investment banks, even some private banks. Insurance companies are getting quite interested in green infrastructure, in part because they think that green infrastructure can reduce the kinds of risks that result from climate impacts and, like, you know, flooding and so on. So this is significant, and also various other industries, like we talked to energy, the energy sector. Agriculture industries are interested. So nature-based solutions are interesting, not just in the urban context, but also in the rural context. And I think that's one interesting direction, particularly for, you know, the fields of research of universities like yours. So anyway, so there's significant money that seems to be there, but one catch is that investment needs to come with some degree of certainty about impacts. So it's not enough just to say that, well, you know, we think green infrastructure is going to produce this and that kind of positive effect. There has to be some degree of certainty. You cannot have 100% certainty, but there has to be more certainty than we have right now. So that, in a sense, is also a challenge for our work on this report card and scoring system. How do you score the effects of nature-based solutions? And it's not easy. It's a really complicated thing, because these infrastructure elements happen in very different contexts, and context is king. So, you know, it's going to make a big difference whether you do something, let's say, here in Iași, or you do it in Vienna, or whatever. So it's an important question, but not easy to answer. You need a lot of analytics for that. So where are we working? We are working in so-called functional urban areas. So these are, again, this is coming from this idea that you have to move to the little larger landscape level. So not just little urban neighborhoods or distinct nature-based solutions, but you have to zoom out. That's a map of so-called functional urban areas in the European level, and they are always bigger than the boundaries of a given city. So it takes kind of the urban, you know, supply areas, and mainly based on transport and commuting patterns. This is all defined by, I mean, there's an OECD definition and there's a European Commission definition for all larger cities around the world. So those are our 12 cities there that we are studying in pretty significant detail, 25 nature-based solutions each. So we have a researcher like Mihaela in every city deployed and collecting data. Those are all the countries, including, I mean, it doesn't show all the cities, but we have these additional control cases from Brazil, Mexico, China, and Sri Lanka, and others. So then that's the list. So I'm not going to go through that. Okay, and then, yeah, that's how we visualized the project. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I sort of explained the objectives of establishing some database, analyzing the patterns of governance, the patterns of effectiveness, and then drawing some conclusions about how what we learned about how nature-based solutions work and managed and governed, how that can be put into practice to improve decision-making, forward-looking planning, finance strategies, and so on. So that's how we brought things together. And then I'm just going to say a few words about what specifically we do in our work package. There are 3 things I'll mention. One is the NatureScapes database, the scorecard idea, and then the case study. And Mihaela will say a few words about that. So the first is this database. As I mentioned, we have 390 case studies, and It's going to be in a standalone database. We have this Urban Nature Atlas that I showed you before that is maintained now by FISI, but we will make all this new data cross-compatible with the Urban Nature Atlas, so that will be, in a way, the mothership. We are also identifying and analyzing these MBS patterns at the naturescape level. So we are, and some of that will be qualitative analysis, some of it will be GIS based through the Nature Conservancy. So we ourselves don't have the GIS capacity, TNC does. So, and Lund University, and they do also spatial modeling. Then this report card idea, as I said, it's a tough one. So it's motivated by this interest in MBS performance. Again, we sort of interested in biodiversity and climate and social well-being. Those are, of course, extremely broad categories. So we have to specify them. So we have to come up with some domain-specific indicators. You can, of course, come up with all kinds of indicators. That's not difficult, but finding data is. And very often data is just either just not there, or it's spotty, or it changes the way it's collected from year to year. So this is making like this kind of scorecard design consistently difficult. And then if you want to score something, what scoring means is that you have good performance, medium performance, poor performance with some scaling. And how you sort of set the scales on a scoring system is again not a simple question, because it will vary from metric to metric, and possibly even from case to case. So we're struggling with this right now, well, and that's part of our current work. And yeah, and this is going to have some sort of a creative interface, maybe like a simplified dashboard. There are many instruments like that, but we don't have the final design figured out yet. We've done similar work in the past, but not here. So again, there's going to be more details about Iași by Mihaela, who already spent some time here and will be still around to talk to many of you and to introduce. Okay, so I asked ChatGPT to draw me a picture of a future city with nature-based solutions. I don't know. So anything you ask ChatGPT, it will do. Whether it makes sense or not, it's a different question. But we do, yeah, there are interesting elements. I think that's about all I wanted to say. I think I'm also at the end of my allocated time, so I'm going to stop and pass to Mihaela to say a few more words about. Yeah, maybe one last thing before you should just come here. Yeah, I mean, Iași has really great potential. I went for a run this morning at I don't know 7, and I went out to the river, and it's great. You know, I mean, getting there is okay. There is traffic, and you can definitely sense air pollution. But once you get down to the river, it's nice. But I met very few people. I think that has so much potential, that area. I mean, cities that have rivers like that, if they can turn that into like a really living part of the community, is fantastic. I mean, I lived in Winnipeg, Canada for 2.5 decades, and I remember very well when we moved there in the 90s, the river looked like the river here. You know, it was kind of, you know, it was nice, but it was abandoned. You go to the shore and it was like some abandoned industrial buildings, and then, you know, muddy. It wasn't terribly approachable. And now you go there, and in 25 years, the city really managed to do a pretty good job of making it approachable, and the connection between people and the ecosystem is really good. It's highly valued. So I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I'm going to be alive in 25 years, but if I come back to Iași, I hope that the river will look like that. So, well, thank you very much, and yeah, over to you.
Bună ziua și mulțumesc frumos. O să stau aici, că nu cred că mă văd dacă stau acolo. Mulțumesc frumos că ați fost atât de primitori. Eu deloc sunt din Alba Iulia, dar sunt cercetător junior la Universitatea Centrală Europeană din Europa. Și din Viena, de fapt, m-am încurcat. Dar proiectul nostru de care vorbea domnul profesor Pinter, într-adevăr, a început în 2024, anul trecut, și durează până în 2027. Acum, poate că vă întrebați de ce ne-am oprit la Iași. În principiu, când vine vorba de cercetare pe soluții bazate de natură, sau aceasta e terminologia, dar soluții bazate de natură au existat din vechi timpuri, doar că în terminologia de specialitate avem termenul respectiv. No, Europa de Est, de regulă, nu e foarte bine reprezentată când vine vorba la a da exemple, a face cercetare în domeniul acesta și una dintre condițiile Uniunii Europene, într-o oarecare măsură, pentru a finanța asemenea proiecte e și de a include orașe din Europa de Est, Iași fiind unul. Dar noi, în principal, Universitatea Centrală Europeană, avem un interes un pic mai mare în Iași, pentru că în 2017 așa dezvoltasem un proiect care se numea Naturvation și pe care domnul profesor l-a explicat. Și atunci am făcut un fel de mapping a tot ce înseamnă soluții bazate în natură în Iași. Am descoperit vreo 10 cazuri la momentul respectiv, inclusiv Palace, acoperișul verde și, până la urmă, ce făcuseră acolo la nivel de grădină publică. Am avut inclusiv cazuri de grădinerit urban comunitar. Era un caz la un moment dat în Casa Memorială Mihail Sadoveanu, unde se făcuse o grădină publică așa. Am avut inclusiv la Melcul Verde, care e făcuseră o grădină senzorială. Și asta, deci, ca să vă dau exemplu ce găsiserăm noi prin 2017. Acum, proiectul acesta, într-o oarecare măsură, nu-i doar de a face mapping de aceste soluții, ci pur și simplu și de a înțelege oarecum conexiunile dintre ele, și la nivel de guvernare, și la nivel de finanțare. Deci nu găsești doar exemplu de NBS, dar trebuie să înțelegi și cum se poziționează el într-un context local, nu doar cu alte NBS-uri, dar inclusiv cu alți actori care, într-o oarecare măsură, finanțează sau guvernează aceste soluții. Ok. Și o să încep prezentarea prin a spune că după ne-am dat seama că Iași e un oraș vital în cercetarea noastră, pentru că, conform politicilor, inclusiv strategiilor locale sau hotărârilor de Consiliu, noi am găsit că sunt niște probleme și aceste probleme, în cele din urmă, ne-am dat seama că nu doar trebuiau evidențiate de aceste hotărâri, e vizibil și dacă mergem pe stradă în Iași. În primul rând, e un trafic infernal și asta e foarte vizibil și traficul ăsta în cele din urmă are un efect asupra nivelului de poluare. Apoi, una dintre strategiile locale arăta la un moment dat că Iașiul nu respectă într-o oarecare măsură standardele de acces când vine vorba la spațiu verde. Deci e posibil să existe, dar, cum să spun, nu toată lumea are acces așa de ușor la aceste spații verzi. Ok? Apoi, bineînțeles, sunt insulele de căldură, care nu sunt doar specifice Iașiului, sunt și alte orașe sau așa, nu doar din România, din Europa, peste tot, care, în contextul schimbărilor climatice, eu consider că e absolut normal. Și, bineînțeles, asta e ultimul ar fi că, fiind pe 7 coline, orașul e oarecum predispus spre niște alunecări de teren. Ok, deci cam astea ar fi, așa ne-am gândit noi în momentul în care am hotărât să ne focusăm pe Iași, cam astea au fost challenges pe care noi le-am descoperit la nivelul orașului. Ok, și cum a prins viață până la urmă cercetarea în Iași? Deci, ce am făcut prima dată e că a existat un mapping, adică la nivel de GIS, cred că, când vine vorba de Iași. Deci, în cercetarea noastră am trebuit să includem, bineînțeles, orașul, dar și zona periurbană. Și la zona periurbană ne-am gândit în principiu că e o zonă care, într-o oarecare măsură, deci e inclusă în area economică a orașului și oamenii de regulă fac naveta. Cam asta ar fi zona periurbană înțeleasă în convențiile OECD și ale Uniunii Europene, practic. Aici, în Iași, după cum vedeți, Lețcan e undeva la limită, Miroslava, mai mult sau mai puțin, dar, de exemplu, ne-am oprit undeva la Podul Iloaie. Acolo e un proiect agroecologic extraordinar de bun acolo, se spune Belvedere și o fundație care îl manageriază și n-am putut să-l includem, dar e un proiect extraordinar până la urmă. Așa. Așa, și ce am făcut în următoarea fază, după ce ne-am ajuns la concluzia că, ok, trebuie să ne fixăm pe ariile astea și așa arată harta periurbană și urbană a Iașiului, am identificat 25 de soluții bazate pe natură și acum am avut niște criterii. Ce înseamnă soluții bazate pe natură? Ar trebui să avem niște criterii ca să le putem identifica și unul dintre ele e că, în principal, trebuie să fie de mai multe tipuri. Trebuie să fie un acoperiș verde, să fie parcuri, grădini urbane, acțiuni de reîmpădurire și ele trebuie să implice așa mai mulți actori, cum ar fi NGO-uri, ar trebui să fie entități CSR, adică business, inclusiv entități academice, instituții publice, poate să fie o școală. Sunt proiecte în Iași care, în principiu, presupun poate plantări de copaci fructiferi în școli cu mai multe asociații. Și aia pentru noi e un MBS. Ok, după ce am identificat așa, aș vrea să dau înainte de toate niște exemple care... Deci eu am venit în Iași, practic, acum o să vorbim cu diversi actori care sunt implicați în aceste soluții bazate pe natură. Ei pot să fie, cum vă spuneam, diverse stakeholders, adică pot să fie din partea business-ului, academic, cei de la departamentul la parcuri, municipalitate, deci diversi actori. Și unul dintre proiectele pe care am fost foarte bucuroasă să-i cunosc pe oamenii de acolo e declararea Ariei Naturale Urbane Ciric. De ce l-am luat în considerare? În principal pentru că proiectul în sine a și vizat un plan de management al biodiversității urbane și a inclus și include în continuare niște tururi la nivel ecologic, adică se fac tururi cu copii, cu oameni. Asta are o capacitate foarte mare la potențial când vine vorba de activitățile de tip știință participativă. Următorul proiect, la care, asta e o poză, mi s-a părut foarte frumoasă și zona e foarte interesantă, pentru că ai aeroportul într-o parte și după aia ai traficul, așa, e ca o oază într-o oarecare măsură și odată ce intri în pădure nu auzi decât păsările. E foarte interesant, că tu ești de fapt aproape de aeroport, dar astea nu se resimt. E o zonă foarte, foarte frumoasă. Apoi, un alt proiect pe care cred îl vor lua în considerare e Parcul Horpaze-Zăreni. Proiectul în sine a început ca o activitate cetățenească, o inițiativă cetățenească și a fost foarte interesant pentru că mie mi s-a părut așa ca și când m-am dat jos din autobuz, m-am așteptat să fie o zonă complet rurală, dar de fapt e super, adică e urbanizată zona în sine. Oamenii nu mai cresc acolo, poate ca la țară, animale. Arată pur și simplu ca o zonă, o suburbie a Iașiului. Și mi s-a părut foarte interesant că toți acești oameni de acolo ori simți nevoia a avea un loc unde să se adune numai ei, unde o să fie un loc verde, unde o să aibă acces la spațiu verde, să nu trebuiască să meargă în alte locații. Și mai ales, altă chestie care mi s-a părut foarte interesant discutând cu cei de la organizația care au demarat această inițiativă cetățenească e că area respectivă susține specii prezente într-un sit Natura 2000 care e chiar în vecinătate. Ciurbești-Bârcat, Ciurbești, de fapt cu lacul Ciurbești am avut în primul nostru proiect, l-am inclus într-o prezentare de bune practici când vine vorba de soluții bazate pe natură. Următorul proiect pe care iarăși o să-l luăm în considerare se numește Parcul Phoenix. În campusul Universitatea Tudor Vladimirescu și Fundația Comunitară din Iași, împreună cu niște parteneri, a dezvoltat proiectul. Ăsta e un mural. Mi s-a părut foarte frumos, îi spune Copacul Vieții. Proiectul a fost inițiat, în primul rând, e bazat pe citizen science, de știință participativă. A fost un concurs, s-au venit studenții care erau la Universitatea de Arhitectură de acolo, mă scuzați. Și proiectul e frumos pentru că include accesul grupurilor cu dizabilități. Iar este ceva ce o soluție bazată pe natură ar trebui să includă în momentul în care e implementată. Da, și acum să vorbesc un pic de ce fac eu aici în Iași, adică v-am spus ce am văzut până acum, dar vă pot spune ce fac eu. Deci în Iași am ajuns săptămâna trecută, în 3 săptămâni intervievez vreo 30 de persoane și sunt diversi stakeholders. Cum vă spuneam, avem un protocol în cadrul proiectului și protocolul respectiv presupune un set de întrebări care se pun în funcție de expertiza fiecărui om cu care vorbesc. Încerc să-mi dau seama, deci întrebările respective se încearcă să înțeleagă într-o oarecare măsură care e dinamica relațiilor dintre diversi actori în momentul în care implementează soluții bazate pe natură. Încercăm să ne dăm seama de beneficii, să ne dăm seama de valori, de ce procese decizionale se iau în momentul în care aceste soluții bazate pe natură sunt implementate. Pentru că ideea în sine e că soluțiile bazate pe natură nu sunt insule, ele trăiesc într-un anume context, indiferent de natura contextului, poate să fie social, poate să fie economic și atunci trebuie să înțelegem contextele acestea, practic. După ce voi vorbi cu toată lumea, voi face o analiză conform protocolului nostru, dar ne vom concentra pe 6-8 soluții bazate pe natură din cele 25 pe care oricum le-am observat până acum. Vom redacta un raport și vom trimite concluziile către parteneri. Acum, noi, cum spunea și domnul profesor, sunt mai mulți cercetători, deci în acest proiect și ei, la rândul lor, au mers în diverse orașe și toată această dată se va sistematiza și probabil că vom trage niște concluzii ca care sunt punctele comune între diverse NBS, într-o oarecare măsură ceea ce numim noi naturescapes. Ok, asta, nu știu dacă aveți întrebări până acum, dar cam asta este prezentarea mea. Vă mulțumesc frumos! O întrebare în spate. Cineva vrea să ne spună întrebare? Da.
Bună ziua, îmi pare bine să vă cunosc. Poate n-am fost atentă, că am fost și eu studentă cândva, mai fuge gândul în altă parte. Studiul pe zona Iașului s-a desfășurat în acest an până acum sau pe o perioadă mai lungă?
Deci urmează, practic. Noi am avut un fel de... Deci am avut un alt proiect, se numea Naturvation, în 2017, așa, tot un proiect Horizon 2020, și atunci tot așa am identificat vreo 10 soluții bazate pe natură. După proiectul respectiv avem proiectul acesta, unde deja am identificat 25 de soluții bazate pe natură și din cele 25 ne vom focusa pe 6, 8 și urmează să... Practic suntem în momentul în care luăm interviuri, n-am scris nimica, n-am redactat absolut nimica, suntem și noi la nivelul de a colecta în momentul ăsta raw data, practic. Plăcere. Ok.
Yeah, okay. Let me answer that. I actually have another project now that is much smaller, which is focused on urban community gardens in China and Europe. So it's a collaborative project with a university in China and Singapore, and we are interested exactly in how these get initiated, what they need, in terms of setting things up, what they need in terms of support, like to keep things going. And this is not so much just theory. I mean, this is like real cases. So we have a few cases in Sweden, Slovenia, Italy, and Hungary, and then in China a couple of cases. So, and in the middle of it. So we just finished data collection. So we haven't come up with any, you know, super insights, but I mean, there are some obvious things that we're looking at. Is obviously there has to be some, you know, access to space. So that's obvious. There is other things obvious, tools, seeds, plants, so on and so on. Then the social sort of the organizational aspects, like who initiates and how do they collaborate? Is it just, and it's different. I mean, so far, you know, there are different patterns. In some cases, you have, let's say, a transformative individual, like individual leadership is really key. Like in many cases, you have one person who kind of gets the bug and just gets things going, and the good organizer and creates an organization. Or you can have a mandated civil society organization, sometimes collaborating strongly with local municipality. So the local government, city government is always important as a partner if it's there. Usually there is not enough money for these kinds of things, but some seed funding helps. And again, we had special cases where, let's say, there was some local grant or some, you know, from European sources. In China, local government put in some seed money, but that again is usually it's enough to get things going, but it's not enough to keep things running on a continuous basis. So there has to be, even though these are not businesses as such, there has to be some sort of a business model. And also other things like who benefits and how, like how people have access to, you know, produce, who has access, who can just go in. Because some, like say, you know, we looked at cases in Hong Kong, for instance, and you know, there's any green space is at a premium. So who can even just go there is an important thing. So I think it's personally, I'm very kind of supportive of the idea. That's why I started that project. I think these things have a future because. For obvious reasons, food security, think back to COVID, as the question was already asked. But I think they are also important for just mentally, for psychologically, for people to experience this ability to grow their own food is very important. And last point is that the knowledge. You know, when we're talking about an increasingly urban world, which means that we have generations and generations of people who grow up essentially in cities, in apartments, with no direct connection to the land at all, and no conception of how you grow stuff. And that's a problem. I think that's a vulnerability. And I think urban community gardens, you know, as small as they may be, they can kind of provide that bridge and opportunity. That's a long answer, sorry.
Hello, I have a question for the professor. I will kindly say that I found the idea of concrete substitution for water and soil restoration very interesting. And my question is, how do you intend to introduce the plan of soil absorption in peri-urban or urban areas? Because as you know, we are very dependent on concrete in urban spaces. And I would really like to know, how do you intend to introduce this soil plan in our community?
So, okay, thank you. So, if I understood you right, you were interested in how can we increase these natural absorption areas in cities. I mean, the technical term for that would be now unsealing, how to unseal city. Actually, we are involved now in a proposal, second level, that is called for unsealing strategies in cities. So, which that would actually imply, I mean, technically at some point, possibly tearing up concrete. So, you know, and reestablishing green space where you used to have concrete, and that can be either just, I don't know, you know, vegetation, or it can be a mix of infrastructure, some gray, but something that allows absorption and recharge, or it can be just vegetation. So, and I mean, I think from the perspective of urban landscape management, where depending on the city, you know, there are rules about what you can do. So understanding not just the technology is maybe even easier than dealing with the rules and the bureaucracy. Like, you know, who owns that piece of land? Is it public, private? You know, it usually costs money to convert these things, not little. You have to have machinery capacity. You're going to end up with some debris, you know, concrete. Where do you deposit? What do you do with that? Can you reuse it, or you have to deposit it? And then what do you do at the landscape level? So I think, and then also, like, where does it make sense to do, let's say, these urban recharge zones? I mean, this is again the other semi-technical term many of you might have heard about, that is the sponge city. There's a lot of literature about this. It's a big deal, again, in countries like China and any country basically that has a lot of flash flooding. So they basically want to create this, you know, recreate the landscape as kind of as a sponge. So when you have, you know, 20 millimeters of rain in 1 hour or half an hour, you know, it's going to dissipate. So how? I mean, I can't give you like, and it's always context matters. You know, you can do certain, the entry points will likely be different. One last point on this is that I'm also very interested in traditional knowledge, old landscapes. And I recently had a graduate student who did a case study on Pantelleria, which is a small island off Sicily that has no freshwater, surface freshwater at all. And people in the antique days had to create these recharge areas in specific places on the landscape where they understood that this was a critical point for recharging the groundwater. That was the only source of water. So again, sometimes there are interesting bridges between traditional knowledge and what we need in terms of modern management. Okay.
Vă mulțumesc foarte mult. Numele meu este Lucian Roșu, vin de la Facultatea de Geografie și Geologie de la Universitatea Alexandru Ioan Cuza. Thank you very much for your presentation. Permiteți-mi să încep cu o glumă internă. Nu doar proiectul dumneavoastră se oprește la podul Iloaie, ci și noi toți când încercăm să ieșim din orașul Iași. This is it. So I would like to thank you for introducing this subject, which I consider to be very important, especially for us, academia. I think it's a grounding start for thinking for the future curricula, for introducing new multidisciplinary approaches, especially for sustainability. And NBS, I believe that it is one of the very good examples of how can we collaborate together in order to really implement real projects. I work on an NBS project in the city of Iași, and I try to work also with the local authority. And I'd like to add one thing to the challenges that you mentioned for the city of Iași. I don't think the main challenges are the one that you pointed out, but I think it's actually the local administration. Because local administration has only one person who takes care of all what it is green spaces in the city of Iași, and for sure does not have any idea about the principles of NBS. And yes, we don't have specialists in the local authorities to do that. So this is a challenge that for me, I don't have any solution. And also there is another challenge that I'd like to speak about. In the city of Iași, we cannot speak about governance, which is actually one of the main principles of integrating NBS solutions. We speak about government. So there is no co-participation of local and community people for deciding how the next green space will look like. And also the acquisition of materials is very, well, complicated process. Everything comes from China and it's plastic. Nothing is nature-based solutions in the parks of the city of Iași. So it's quite difficult to change these mentalities, but somehow we have to do it, and we have to do it together. We have to do it with the students, we have to do it with the professors, we have to do it with examples from other countries. But my question is for Professor, and I would like to ask you, in the context of where we're speaking today of Europe in different speeds, and two different speeds, and the image that you've shown with ChatGPT is very close to what cities have nowadays. So if you're going to the airport of Singapore, I think it's very similar to what we have seen. While in Eastern Europe, the examples of NBS are quite simple. Like 100 square meters of communitary garden is not something very good example. So in this context of different speeds of Europe and different solutions that are implemented at different scales, I would like to ask you, why do you think is the main cause of this? Is rather the cost of implementing NBS solutions? Is rather the lack of expertise? Or maybe, I don't know, in your studies, what do you think is the cause of that NBS solutions, which are actually very cost efficient and very easy to implement, have different scale of complexity in different countries, and there is a gradient from the west towards east? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And thanks. I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, one thing that and I don't know whether, and there is no simple answer, of course, as you would expect. But one thing that I mean, over my career of some time now, I came to recognize, which I don't think I have recognized at the beginning, very early, enthusiastic, young, and so on, was the importance of culture and mentality. And I'm not saying, and every country, and you said, well, you know, Eastern Europe and so on. I mean, I tell you, Canada has its own problems. I mean, it was there. I mean, I know the problems with the municipality, with the leadership, and so on and so on. So, I'm not saying culture in this regional context. I'm saying culture in a much broader context, that in the context of maybe modernity, that we got cultured to expecting solutions from sort of engineered systems, and too much. You know, I shouldn't simplify, of course, because we still have, you know, lots of sort of aspects of nature in industrial processes and elsewhere. But I think things become habitual, and you get, you know, you expect the engineer and to solve the problems before you start thinking. And, you know, those are kind of the gray solutions. And I don't mean just now build structures, but as a mentality. And I don't think that's the way, of course, nature works. It's living systems that will change, and we don't have institutions. I mean, okay, again, I'm exaggerating here, but our institutions, especially bureaucratic types, are configured very much to work with sort of the engineering system, you know, input A, output B. So I think there's a need for a cultural shift. As I mentioned also, I mean, finance, yeah, is an issue, but as I mentioned, and I think that's a real phenomenon, is that money is somehow not necessarily a problem, but we need to articulate better and have better evidence of the value and benefits. And we don't really have that. I mean, we're making all these broad claims about impact on, you know, even I was making these claims about biodiversity contribution and climate change and so on, but very often you go to a city A and, you know, do you really have proof that this piece of infrastructure really resulted in that much, you know, improvement, and is that enough? And is that going to be enough not just today, when we are at this 1.5 level globally, Celsius, but let's say, is that going to be enough 30 years from now, where we are, again, might be shifting into another scenario, I don't know. So it's, so I mean, as I said, I'm not going to have a straightforward answer. I don't think there is a straightforward answer. Yeah, and leadership, like that's a big one. Individual leadership is a big deal, I think. You know, an articulate person in the right position at the right time, standing up and saying that we're going to do this and then sticking with it. So I found that, and that needs talent, but it's a big deal, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm happy with that. I mean, you can come up to me and Mihaela. I mean, we're still here for a while, so we are very approachable. So if you have any individual questions, we're absolutely happy. If someone wants to go for a run tomorrow morning, let me know. I'll be out there at 7. So, yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. It is an important project, and it needs collaboration also. And it is important to involve also the students. How could be our students involved in this project and in this state case study in Iași? How could be involved the students to contribute and to participate in this project?
Well, I'm leaving tomorrow. So I won't be here, but Mihaela is here, and she will be doing interviews. And I suspect we could use more information on. I mean, maybe you could do a more detailed briefing on where things stand, and if any student is interested, you know, if it's going to be one person, it's one person. If it's more, it's more. And then I mean, at the moment we are gathering information. So that's one thing. Down the road, I mean, I was going to say that well, this is not what you had in mind, but we also, so if anyone is interested in our master's or PhD programs, you are welcome to apply to those. And we have decent scholarships, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, I would suggest this, you know, Mihaela, we can organize another information session on more detail and provide the information on the specific MBS cases that we have already identified. I mean, we are characterizing them and put this information in the Urban Nature Atlas. So we could do that. We have another piece of software that we developed. It's called the Urban Nature Explorer, which we are not using in the project, but it is basically, it's a piece of software that can be used to in anywhere basically to designate a geographic area like a city, and then create a baseline, and then add green infrastructure elements from a library, and we calibrate this to local conditions, cost, and impacts. And as you are basically redeveloping that area with ideas of MBS, you instantly get cost and impact projections related to metrics you're interested in. So we've also used that in a couple of places in the world, and we are open to anyone who's interested in using that, then come and see me. So yeah, these kinds of things. Yeah.
Since you mentioned already identified nature-based solutions, maybe the students here, once they receive more information about which are the organizations, entities, whatever, applying such nature-based solutions, maybe they would like to volunteer to help out with this and gaining some sort of work experience through this. I'm working with Civica on the Area Naturală Urbană Ciric. We have Lucian here who works with Civica on Oaze Urbane, and I'm sure there will be other solutions, at least to visit and get information, you know. If not, maybe there's no need for volunteering.
It seems there's a networking issue in Iași, but yeah, in accordance with GDPR, because that's That's something that we have to take into account. We can share a list of NGOs that are working in Iași, and I'm pretty sure they will need a lot of help. If you know, from the people that I've talked to, and they were from the NGO side, they all mentioned that to an extent they want to, you know, they would like to extend their projects, but they don't have capacity, and that is human capacity. Now, I think that would be and I think Sorana said that's a fantastic idea. So I will probably share eventually. I'm staying until the 31st in Iași, and as Professor Pinter said, you're more than welcome to contact me. I will, if you want to show me a site, if you want to have an interview with me, that would be great. I'm open to absolutely anything. I'm really enjoying my time here, and yeah, so just hit me up, and I'm more than happy to talk to anyone. But yeah, I will share I will probably share the list with Roxana, and from there you will have a list. You'll have mapped at least the people that, not necessarily the people, but the NGOs and the other organizations that we've spoken to so far. Yeah, that's, yeah.
Of course, we expect very precise details in the project for the students and landscapes, in the environmental engineering, in horticulture, because of course they can bring solutions in our project. They can bring new ideas. They know very well Iași, and can make proposals, I'm sure. And with their enthusiasm, I think will be many advantages. Yeah. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are other questions. No? There are no. Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you very much for your participation, for being here today. It was really a pleasure for us, and it is a gain in the fact that we know you, we know your project. We will have surely a collaboration in the future. And of course, I refer in this point, implying the students mainly, and also implying our university and faculty in your project. Thank you very much, and we expect you with another presentation and another needs in contributing to Iași sustainable development. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Cred că suntem spre finalul workshop-ului de astăzi. Vă mulțumesc tuturor pentru participare. Mulțumesc studenților și mult succes în continuare la examene, că încă mai sunt, nu? Da? Mult succes și multă baftă. Și invitațiilor, de asemenea, mult succes. Mulțumim pentru participare și vă invităm la viitoare.